Welcome to Tell Me Where I'm Going Wrong, a podcast where two exes take a light-hearted look at pop culture, aging, music, and how the end of a 20-year relationship doesn't have to mean the end of the friendship. In this episode, we talk about Celine Dion's triumphant return, remembering Sinead O'Connor, and how 90s boy band 911 went viral on YouTube with the help of a Vietnamese pop star. Enjoy the ride. Hello, welcome to another episode of Tell Me Where I'm Going Wrong. My name is Sean, and on the other side of this camera is Josh.
Hello, everyone.
And we're two exes who like to tell each other where we're going wrong. We talk about pop culture, music, growing old, being middle-aged or approaching middle-age, and pretty much anything at all. And I suppose we can just dive right into this episode. If you haven't listened to our previous episodes, you can go back and take a listen to get an idea of what we're about, or just we're really happy you joined us today.
Can we see, Sean? Can we see if we could do an episode without going into either of the Minogue sisters?
No,
do you think? Okay.
No, you've already brought them up now. So
well, I know, but I just thought maybe our anecdotes and topics and discussion won't actually lead to Minogues today.
Maybe we should start talking about the non-famous Minogues, like Brendan Minogue. Didn't Carol the mum? What was the?
No, I'm going to stop you right there. No, we're not going to discuss the Minogues. Let's not talk about the Minogues.
Listen,
there are plenty of podcasts that do that perfectly well, and we don't need to do it.
Okay, well, if you ever do want to help me remember what Danny and Kylie Minogue's father's name is, because I can't remember. I think it might be Ron, but I don't know.
I think you're right. Ron and Carol. Anyway, from one performing family, I wanted to talk about another performance that I saw in the last few days, and that was at the opening of the Paris Olympic Games. And even though, Sean, obviously you know this about me, I've never been a big fan of Celine Dion. Her music's never really spoken to me. Sorry, excuse my croaky voice as well. I'll explain that in a minute. But, I've never been a huge fan of Celine Dion. Her music, some of her songs are okay. She's, it's mostly ballads, let's face it. But that said, I did have a tear in my eye when I saw her perform at the opening ceremony, just because, it's really, for her to have overcome, or seemingly to have overcome, in a large part, her physical health struggles that she's been going through over the last few years. It was very emotional. I didn't know she was going to perform. I also didn't know Lady Gaga was going to perform either. That was very exciting. But yeah, I just wanted to mention Celine Dion because it was an unexpected emotional moment for me seeing her perform.
Why do you think people love Celine Dion so much?
I think, she loves what she does. Like, you can really see it, I think, in her performance. And I have to hold my hand up and say, again, I was not ever a huge Celine fan. So it's not like I would actively go looking for Celine Dion performances and watch them. But that said, of course, given the way social media works, particularly, invariably Celine Dion stuff would sometimes come up into my feed and I would watch it. And even though I would never have classed myself a fan, it was quite, she was a very good show person. She really put herself into her performance. And she loves what she does. She loves being on stage and performing. It's quite clear, I think, from her performances. So I think that is what endears me to her. And then, of course, I don't know when it was it 2 years ago when she revealed her health struggles with stiff person syndrome and how that was going to stop her performing. I thought that was really, really sad, and I thought it was very, I haven't watched the documentary. I think is it on Amazon Prime? I'm not sure.
No idea.
I haven't watched the documentary, but it's, people say it's a very good documentary. In fact, I may well watch it now. And
yeah, but I think is it like people get to a certain period of being alive and performing and persevering, and it sort of softens you up a bit to them, do you think? Like that if it was 30 years ago, oh, whatever. Even though she's incredibly talented, it's just not your cup of tea. You're just not into it. But as people, like her husband passed away, she's had hard struggles. She's just been going for a really long time. Is that part of the appeal, do you think, that she's a survivor?
Yeah, definitely. I think, and that's something that really resonates with me, and I'm sure with millions of other people, is overcoming, struggles, mental or physical health struggles, and yeah, because I think you need to identify with a person. It's not all about the music. It very rarely is all about the music, I think. Um,
I don't understand, it's not my business either really, apart from the fact that she like makes it everyone's business by talking about it. But I really thought that her illness was going to be the end of her performing, right? And so she's
mm,
worked hard to rehabilitate, but I'd never thought that she would be at the level of like doing a concert again. But it's just been on the news that she's just signed a new deal in Vegas to do a
oh,
residency.
really? Okay.
And
Okay.
so, I'm not saying that she wasn't that unwell, but I'm really shocked that I thought from all of the news and the way that it was reported over the last few years that her
Mm,
career had wound down
mm.
to not be like that. So it's really amazing that she's made this recovery.
Yeah,
She's
it
going to
is.
perform again
But
like
I
a
mean,
regular.
she's got she's got the resources, she's got the means to the very best healthcare and rehabilitation out there. So
But has she got the range?
she's got the range. She's still got the range. And if you don't know what we're talking about, I don't know. Do you want to explain what that reference is?
Okay, if you know who Matt Lucas is an English comedian who most famously, if you're from outside the UK, had a TV show with a performing partner who was called David Williams, and they had a comedy skit show called Little Britain. And but prior to that, they had another skit show called Rock Profiles. Is that what it was called?
I think so. I'm not really sure what it was
Where they would
called. Or
impersonate famous people and make fun of them and do silly skits. I mean, there was one skit I can remember where they were pretending to be Boy George and Marilyn, who was another '80s singer, and they were fighting. But
it's quite is it a British thing? I'm not sure, but it seems to be quite a British thing for comedians to do like send ups or spoofs of
yeah,
musicians.
and
Is
them to
that?
not even a lot of the time be funny, but the humor is meant to be that they're just pretending to be them. Like,
Hmm.
but I think there's an exception to that in when Matt Lucas pretends to be Shirley Bassey,
Dame Shirley Bassey.
Dame Shirley Bassey, and it is iconic and hilarious. I don't
I
know.
don't. We can't reenact the entire sketch now for
No,
both copyright reasons and just because it would go on too long. But suffice to say that Shirley Bassey, that Matt Lucas plays a very very I don't know how you would even say it, inflated and over exaggerated version of Shirley Bassey, and basically is dismissing every other singer out there, and the sort of the punchline that he uses is that they don't have the range, as in the vocal range.
she doesn't have the
Um,
range.
so yeah, and then so the interviewer is Jamie Theakston, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, a
Uh,
UK TV presenter who used to be a children's TV presenter. But
and he's throwing all these names out there,
it's
and she's
like
like, no, she
Cheryl
doesn't have
Crow.
the
Oh no,
range.
she doesn't have the range. Elton John. Oh, I love Elton, but she doesn't have the range. And then he says Shirley Bassey. Oh, Shirley, I love it to bits, but she doesn't have the range.
Who's the which is the singer where where she says, "Oh, sorry, darling, I love you, I adore you, but you don't have the range." Which one is that she's referring to?
Oh, I can't remember. He's just saying it in rapid fire, so I can't
Yeah,
remember who.
it's very fun. Anyway, why were we talking about this? Was this from Celine? Celine does still have the range. I think that was
Yes,
the
that's right. That's how we
question.
got
Yes.
onto that. Um,
Yeah.
but one thing that I'm not like to be a petty fan of somebody else, but it annoys me when I'm a fan of somebody and then somebody else covers a song of by that person, and then people think that it's that other person. And it always annoys me if I ask people about the song "I Drove All Night" by
Oh
Cyndi
yeah,
Lauper.
yeah,
They say, "Oh, don't you mean Celine Dion?" And I'm like,
yeah.
"No, I don't mean Celine Dion. Like,
No,
please, read your history books.
check
Like,
your facts.
check your facts." And actually, to be a petty fan, I'm not even sure Cindy's version came out before.
Roy
Actually, I think it
Orbison's.
came out before Roy Orbison's, but I think
Yeah,
Roy
I think
Orbison
so.
might have recorded it first. I don't know if that's
Oh,
correct.
yeah, I think I do recall hearing that.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
but it annoys me that people go, "Oh yeah, I don't really much like the Celine Dion song. It's not a good song." And I'm like, "Well, you've got to hear the Cindy version. It's incredible."
yeah.
But then that's also complicated because I know that Cyndi Lauper was in a really bad place and hated her career and all these songwriters at the time,
Hmm.
and felt really exploited and
Well,
compromised.
well, that without wanting to get too far off track with Celine, but that makes me think of another news story that I just read this morning because the coroner's report finally just came out for Sinead O'Connor's death, which was just over a year ago.
Yeah,
Because I remember you and Hill were celebrating your anniversary on was it the 26th or something?
yeah,
And we met for dinner that night. Do you remember at the Dalston Superstore? And Charlotte turned up, and she was the one that told me about Sinead. I think she just died the day before. So, yeah, the coroner's report just came out today for Sinead O'Connor's death. And, obviously I thought of that because she became so famous for doing a song which was written by Prince. So,
mhm.
it's so interesting how a song just, by one performer can can completely eclipse previous versions of it.
Can you think of other examples of that? I mean, obviously the most famous is Whitney covering Dolly,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but I
Oh,
think,
there'd be countless
I
examples.
mean, Prince also has. Well, I don't think he ever recorded the song, but he wrote "Manic Monday" by the Bangles.
Yeah, that's right.
And then Prince also had "I Feel for You," which was made very
Shaka.
famous by Shaka Khan.
Yeah, yeah.
So
But
Prince
didn't
has
he
a
didn't
few.
he write that for her?
No, it's on his album. Like it's on
Oh, was it? Oh, I
his
didn't
maybe
know.
one of his. Is it on Prince for You or something like one his first album?
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, and then I think she just covered it. That's
Yeah.
my memory of it. If anyone knows differently, especially the estate of Prince, if you're
Mm-hmm.
listening, please get into.
Paisley Park Estates.
I mean, Prince might be someone else we've also mentioned in every every episode.
We definitely mentioned him last time. Did we mention him in the first one? I'm not sure. But
Talking about, well, actually, I wanted to say something about Sinead first. But
oh
was
yeah.
it a year ago that she uh, died? Just over a year ago? Is
Yeah.
that what you were saying?
Yeah.
Feels longer than that.
I know. I know.
But it was very emotional. Like people won't know, but we all just went. A group of us went to Ireland on a road trip, and we went to Sinead's gravestone,
Mm,
her burial place.
mm.
What suburb was it in Dublin?
I forget. It's in the very, very southern suburbs of Dublin. Because she
Yeah,
lived in Bray, which is just south of Dublin. So it's sort of halfway between Bray and the city centre of Dublin, I suppose.
yeah, it was very emotional going there, and Sinead is just one of these people that I don't know. Like even though she was always struggling, I never thought she wouldn't be there. I didn't think
Mm,
that she would not be there one day.
yeah,
Um, I felt the same way with Prince as well when Prince died. I thought Prince would outlive me by about 100 years,
yeah,
just because he felt so immortal. Like he felt
yeah,
not of this world, and I felt the same way about Sinead. That
yeah,
she was so strong to go through what she went through. I mean, people were so horrible to her
yeah,
in the late '80s and the '90s. I
yeah,
mean, do you remember like Madonna being awful about
yeah,
Sinead and
yeah. I mean, when you look back, Sinead's activism, she was so vilified for speaking the truth and speaking up against so many, like horrific injustices, and I mean, in classic awful human nature form, she was torn to shreds. She was just absolutely hated upon, and she spoke up so much about abuse within the Catholic Church. Way before, like decades before, people were willing to talk about it.
Yeah, and to
She,
have the bravery to do that, the fearlessness, because I mean, and the time when she went on Saturday Night Live and ripped up the picture of the Pope, and
mm,
I mean, if I think if they could have arrested her or sent her to prison for 20 years, that people would have been really happy to see that happen.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's really weird to think back, like how different things are now, like what somebody could do on television now,
mm,
and but what happened, like it derailed her career. I mean, she was one of the biggest stars on the planet, and it derailed her career.
but
But I
doesn't it speak so much to how we as a society, not you and I maybe as individuals hopefully, but how we want to silence people who speak up about things, because we are so collectively, we are so scared and so willing to bury our heads in the sand. I mean, you talking about that made me immediately think of the activists, the Just Stop Oil activists who have been jailed for a protest about
yeah,
climate change. And climate change is something that does need to be spoken about. And they've been vilified, and there's been quite a large public and international outcry over the severity of their sentences. But still, I mean, they've been sentenced to prison,
yeah.
and it's the same, isn't it? Well, not exactly the same, but it's that same sort of phenomenon where somebody is speaking up about a huge injustice that needs to be spoken about, and that we need to raise awareness about, and yet they are demonized for it.
And the people that Sinead and other activists who are speaking out against the Catholic Church and the people in power in the Catholic Church are not only do they not get in trouble, but they're protected. So
Yeah.
people, the media, and organizations and governments will go out of their way to protect these people from criticism,
Mm.
and it still goes on now. I mean, it's outrageous, and that's one of the reasons why when I travel around the world or if I visit a place, I have a very very hard time going into a church,
Yeah.
because of the systemic oppression of people all over the planet,
Mm.
but especially around the abuse that happens in churches. But with Sinead, I mean, there's obviously the other level there of misogyny. And, we were
Hmm.
talking in the last episode, I think, about Shannon Doherty and what a hard time she had in the press as a young woman.
Yeah.
And Sinead obviously was on a different level. I would say, even for a moment, she was maybe more famous, or her notoriety or how people framed her as notorious was maybe on a higher level than Shannon Doherty for a very brief time. But it was so intense, the hatred and
Oh
the
yeah.
vitriol that
There's that
people.
awful, awful footage you can watch on YouTube. I think it was at a Madison Square Garden concert, and it was just shortly after she'd been on Saturday Night Live and torn up that picture of the Pope, and she just got booed so badly. It was
Yeah.
just so like vitriolic and
And
awful.
was it Chris Christopherson who walked on stage to like comfort her?
Maybe,
Like another singer
yeah,
came out. I think it was
yeah. I
Chris
can't, yeah,
Christopherson.
you might be right. I'm not sure, but
But
yeah,
and this happens to women on a level that male performers would never. I mean, like I not to always bring it back to Prince, but he's tied so closely to the Sinead story as well.
yeah.
When he was at the MTV Awards in, I forget what year it was, '92, or and he showed what everyone thought was his bare ass on his backside.
What do you mean? What everyone thought? Was it not his bare ass?
Well, I think it was skin colored material.
Oh, okay,
So it
okay.
looked like it and you could see that there was material there, but everyone thought it was
Uh,
completely see-through. But I read an interview with the designer, and I think she said she matched material to be flesh-colored to prints.
oh, right. Okay.
And but for all, everyone's understanding that that was his skin, right?
Yeah.
Or that you
Yeah.
could see his bare backside.
Yeah.
But I can remember people going, "Oh, that's titillating," or "That's raunchy," but he didn't get ripped to shreds or sort of like rejected by the mainstream for it.
No.
But if, like, say, I suppose the most obvious equivalence would be Madonna would do something sexual or
Mm.
revealing a body part or
Mm.
anything like that. And I mean, things like erotica and the sex book, pretty much derailed her career as well,
Yeah.
ruined her career. And so there's a double standard, and women are treated so badly by the
Yeah.
media for
Yeah.
either being sexual or for speaking up against injustice.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Sinead really suffered the brunt of that. She was one of
Mm.
these people that was just absolutely vilified by the press.
And
And
she was also just so far sort of ahead of her time. I mean, if she had if she had, if her life could be transposed, 20 years later, her activism would have been celebrated much more, but it was so
yes,
shrouded
she
down
probably would have
by.
got like a Netflix deal to make a 6-part documentary about the Catholic Church in Ireland or something.
Yeah, totally, totally.
Instead of being like railroaded out of the business. And
And then, not to bring the conversation back to the greatest TV witches of all time, but I think Rose McGowan obviously faced a huge amount of criticism when she started, talking about Me Too. But um, she was, I suppose, in some ways, she was more successful in it, because I think at that point the sort of the zeitgeist had changed, and people were much more willing and open to listen. That's not to discount the huge amounts of misogyny and abuse that she would have faced for speaking out. But I just think, Sinead at that time, when she would speak out about things in the 80s and the 90s, and the noughties, she just faced a really, really inordinate amount of abuse and grief over it, which is such a shame.
we're also talking about white women here. I mean,
Mm.
they have the privilege of being listened to then being discounted. I mean, women of color just don't even get the platform to, in the like mainstream platforms, to speak out.
Mm.
I'm going to say something really embarrassing here because I can't remember her name, but remember when um, the indigenous activist went on stage to collect Academy Award on behalf of Marlon Brando? I mean, obviously way before we were born.
Yeah, yeah.
I think, right? Was it?
Well,
It would have
it
been
might
in
have
the
been it might have
'70s.
been in the 70s. I'm not sure what
Okay,
period in the 70s, but yeah.
and I think that because that person, that woman, lived outside in this sort of invisible world that people don't even acknowledge. They don't even bother tearing something like that down. I mean,
Mm.
it was seen as like either disrespectful or not the right thing to do. But people like her are so far on the outsides of, like they didn't have a career to rip down. Whereas
Mm.
someone like Jane Fonda, who spoke up against lots of causes in her time, most notably the Vietnamese War, her career went from, got dragged from this side to that side, and she, had resurgences, and she got kicked out of the mainstream, all of this. But she had the platform because she was a white woman. And
Yeah.
so like black women, brown women, especially trans women, it's so easy for them to just not even get the platform to be dragged for their opinions because they're
Yeah.
locked out of the main discourse.
Yeah.
Um, I just want to pivot a little bit, we were talking about people doing cover versions.
Oh yeah.
And one of the pop bands in the 90s and early 2000s, no, maybe just the 90s, I think, who were quite famous in the UK for doing cover versions was a boy band called 911.
Oh yes, yeah, yeah.
So, they had a lot of cover versions, right? Like, um,
More Than a Woman.
yeah, like
Um,
a little bit more, like that ballad. So anyway, most of their singles were cover versions of songs. And
mhm.
do you remember when we went to see them? Where was that?
It
In
was
Leeds?
Wembley Arena.
No, no. Well, didn't you come with me to go see them at that university years after they
No, no. I think that you went with Simon, maybe.
did I?
Yeah, I
But did
didn't
you
go.
come and you didn't come and see them at Wembley, did you?
Yeah, yeah.
Really?
What was the? Is it Spike? Is that his name? One of the band members.
Yeah, Spike, Jimmy,
And
and Lee.
Spike's brother was in the audience, and he looked quite similar to him. I
Right.
remember that, and people, the fans, were going, "Oh my god, it's Spike's brother!"
And the opening act was Bewitched.
Yes.
Okay, so we saw them what year, whatever year that would have been. I
No
can't
idea.
even
No idea. No
like
idea.
99, 2000, 99.
Maybe
I think they broke
99.
up around 99. You know what I mean? Like they didn't last very long,
Right.
but they then years later. So this must have been in 2009 or something, or 10 or 13.
Hmm.
I don't know what year it was. 2013, I don't know. But I went to see them perform at a university bar. So they were touring again, like, 10 years or however many years after they had been famous, they were back touring again.
Hmm.
And they said, like, sort of homophobic stuff from the stage, and I left the gig and I was really
Oh,
upset.
what did they say?
Oh, they were like, it was barely anybody there. It was a university crowd. And they were talking to young women in the front, and they were like, "Oh, you look like sisters," and they were like all laughing at each other. And then they go, "Oh, maybe you're lesbians. Why don't you make out for us?" And they were being really just crass,
Oh
like
God.
absolutely vile,
Yeah.
like sexist, homophobic, and they just all looked. I think they were all drinking on stage. Not that that means that you have to be those things, but it just went with the vibe. It was just an ugly vibe.
Right. Okay.
Anyway, I don't know why I was thinking about them the other day, and I thought, I wonder, I wonder what this band 911 is doing. I mean, they obviously weren't famous anymore when 9/11 happened because that wouldn't have been able to work, would it?
Yeah, that would.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was thinking about them the other day, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to Google to see what they're up to because I even though they turned out, in my opinion, to be quite unsavourable when I saw them at Leeds Uni or whatever I saw them, I still really liked a lot of the pop songs they released. If you
Hmm.
probably listeners are getting an idea now that I have a very lowbrow taste in pop music, but I
I would say eclectic,
eclectic.
not lowbrow, eclectic.
Okay, that's very kind of you. But I was thinking, what happened to them? And so I searched for them, and they're still touring in Asia, and that they're quite big in Vietnam. And I
Oh,
was like,
really?
so shocked. They had this song they released in like 2013, and it's called "I Do," and it's this like soppy ballad about getting married to someone, and you're gonna love them for the rest of your life as soon as they say "I do." Like this fucking horrible like ballad. I mean, it's whatever. It's a song that you can
Hmm.
listen to it, and it's like it's got a melody and whatever. But then 10 years after they released it, they re-recorded it with this Vietnamese artist called Duke Phuc, and I think he was on like something like The Voice Vietnam or something, and he's like a huge singer there. So they
Hmm.
re-recorded it. They re-recorded it where they're all singing English, and then they re-recorded it where they're singing English, and some of it is sung by Duke Phuc in
In
Vietnamese.
Vietnamese. Okay.
And I thought, I wonder if this was a hit. And so I looked at their channel and saw. So this was just last year, and the English version on their channel has been viewed like 3.8 million times on YouTube. And I was like, oh, that's pretty big for them, considering videos of theirs from when they were famous have a couple of 100,000 maybe. It's like that must have been a big hit. But then I went to look at the version with the Vietnamese in it, and it has been viewed since last year 70 million times.
Wow.
Like
Okay.
70. And so they're doing all these concerts over there, and they're like always in like Hanoi, and like I looked at their Instagram, and they're like, "Oh, we're in Hanoi again," and
Wow.
it was just like, imagine being that bottom of the barrel pop star that you're like playing to like an empty union bar at Leeds Uni,
Hmm.
making homophobic jibes at women in the front row. And now you're like a big pop star in Vietnam, and you're playing to like an arena full of people again.
Mm.
Um, and I just found that a really interesting resurrection story.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, they must have surely thought at so many points in their career, like, it's all over.
Well, do you remember when they were on that documentary series called The Big Reunion?
Vaguely. I don't think I watched it that much, but yeah,
And
I remember them being on it.
it was all these pop bands who were big in the 90s, and they brought them back together to do a big concert, and then it was so popular that they did a whole arena tour of the UK.
Yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
remember what the other bands were. I think maybe Bewitched and Five, the boy band Five, maybe the Honeys as
Okay.
well. But Lee from 911 used to be married to Lindsay from Bewitched.
Yeah. Yeah.
And while they were making this big reunion show, I don't think they were together anymore. And it was also like a little bit of
A
tension
little bit of melodrama.
behind the scenes. But if people don't know the era of English pop music that we're talking about, or UK pop music, it really was quite. It was at both like sort of a golden era of pop music, but also like the worst of the worst. It's like
There must be a podcast dedicated to that, surely.
it was almost like anybody could become a pop star, but they didn't earn any money, or because these kids would sign these contracts where they didn't own the intellectual rights to anything they did. They mostly weren't allowed to write the songs or be
Mm.
involved in any production or anything. So they were paid salaries to just be the face of the acts
Hmm.
and then go out on the road. And they would work them so hard, and they would just tour and tour and tour. And I think the lucky ones were the ones who were able to disappear quite quickly, but then come back and have ownership over it and do their own stuff, like Steps. So,
Mm. Yeah.
Steps is a really interesting concept. They had zero input really over what they were doing at the time when they were first
Mm.
around. They didn't even sing live. Like, they are the first to admit that they did arena tours around the UK at the height of their fame, and not one of them would sing live
Really.
because either they weren't allowed to, or it was just so quick they didn't even have time to rehearse.
It was
And
just a
so,
conveyor belt, like a
yeah,
factory.
and
Yeah.
so now that they play live,
Mm.
they really pride themselves on singing live because they're all decent, competent singers, and
Yeah.
Claire is I think an exceptional singer,
Yeah.
but they made sure that if they ever came back and did it on the scale again that they used to, that they would sing live. But
Mm.
all of those bands some of their singles would sell like 1 million copies out the gate, because it was around that heightened time where CD singles and digital singles were just starting to come out. So
Mm.
people were selling a lot of physical product.
Yeah.
And so you had these bands like Blue and Bewitched and 911. I mean, 911, I think, sold something like 10 million albums around the world when
Mm.
at the time they were famous, but they would have had no money from it.
No.
And
I mean,
uh,
record labels, really, really traditionally just have completely screwed over their artists. And unless you are like the one in a million artist who, has a career spanning more than sort of 5 years, you're never going to recoup the money that the record labels spend on you. And so you're just going to end up broke, owing money. It's really sad. It's really, really sad that, there are people who just are so, they're so seduced by the prospect of it, and go into these awful contracts, which give them no rights, no longevity in terms of financial stability or anything like that. It's
And I
really
heard
sad to see.
I heard Simon Cowell talking the other day, or I saw an interview with him where he said his biggest regret with One Direction was that he didn't keep the intellectual rights or the naming rights to the band, because he would he would be exploiting it. He said he would make, like, you know how ABBA have that show with the holograms?
Mm.
He said if he had been smarter, in his words, some people would say more manipulative, but if he had been smarter, he would have kept the every right attached to it, like the visual element of it, what the guys looked like, what they were dressed as One Direction, the name, everything, and he would open a show that One Direction fans from all around the world could come to and watch a hologram show of One Direction. He
Oh,
said he would have made more money than he could ever dreamed of doing that, because
Poor Simon. He must really be
I know,
struggling
right?
having not done that.
And so, this is what these young kids are up against. Like, they just sign away not only their sort of like their labor, like they're working for not a lot of money comparatively to what these corporations are making, but a lot
Mm.
of the times they're signing away what they look like. like they,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
people can make dolls and sell them in another country, and they get like maybe a penny or something.
yeah,
I think the
yeah.
way the Spice Girls made so much money was that they got a lot of songwriting credits.
Mm.
They were either their manager or they were savvy enough to say, this is the deal we're going to give you, and we're not going
Mm.
to lock you out of this. But also, they merchandised everything to an inch of their lives, and they got a good merchandise deal, so they didn't get locked out of that. And so when they came back, remember when they did the first big reunion tour that they did, and they played
Mm.
stadiums? I
Yeah.
think they all made like £10 million or something from that tour. It was a really lucrative thing for them. Not that they weren't rich. Not that they weren't rich already. They all had a lot of money, but
They also
yeah,
did. They did a lot of sponsorship stuff as well, didn't they?
yeah.
They did a lot of advertising.
Oh,
They would have made
and
a lot of money, and that's why I suppose a lot of artists do that. Particularly, pop artists who are locked into these really unfair, weighted against them sort of contracts. That the only way for them really to make money outside of record label, you know, recouping or whatever recuperation is to do these big sort of sponsorship deals. So
I mean, it's funny, right? Like, people might know from listening to this that you are a singer songwriter and that you perform,
mhm.
but you're a lot older, right? You're not going to have someone come to you and say, "Oh, we'll pay you, £3,000 a month if you go on this tour." They're not going to do that to you because you're not seen as marketable like a
Mhm.
teenage band would be or a K-pop band.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that you can't make money or make a living. I'm not saying you might be the richest person in the world, or you're not going to get like a residency like Celine Dion. Um, but there are ways to make money, right? Like a living. There are ways to
Are there? I don't know
get paid.
if you know any, let me know.
Well, I mean, there are people that who never become famous and no one would ever know who they are, but they maybe sell their songs to get placed in TV shows or
Yeah, production music is a big earner, and probably yeah, like that's short of sort of becoming a well known household name. Production music, sync music is also one of the best ways to make money, and that can be with TV, film, advertising, computer games to a lesser extent, I think. But yeah, that's one avenue which you can sort of actively pursue, or in some cases you're just fortunate enough. I think Grey's Anatomy was one of the sort of the first TV shows that really became known as a place for emerging artists to get placement and build a career from. But yeah,
But I
that's
mean, that's still like a 1 in a million chance, right? I mean, how many artists did they break and how many artists are there? It's
Yeah.
it's not like, oh, it's actually a viable plan. I mean, you could plan to get on a TV show, but you
Hmm.
might end up on like, I don't know, some sort of science fiction TV show that's on like the Sci-Fi Channel or something that's watched by 300 people on a Thursday night in the UK. As
Mm.
or you could get on Grey's Anatomy. Like you're not
Oh yeah,
always
it's
going
a
to,
lottery, really.
yeah.
Yeah.
But do you feel that, I mean, you've performed for a few years. Like, when was the first time you performed in public?
The very first time would have been in Brisbane. I don't know. So many years ago, I'm not really sure. Like maybe it was that vegan restaurant in West End in Brisbane, the Forest.
Oh, the Forest, yeah.
And I was so nervous, like so nervous.
I was really nervous for you.
And I mean, there would have been maybe five people in the room. It was, it was not. I don't know, but it was just, I was very shy. I was a very different person back then. I still am a bit shy. I'm still a bit of an introvert at times, but I was very, very lacking in confidence at the time, and so it was excruciatingly nerve wracking
And it
for
was an
me.
open mic, wasn't it?
I think so.
Yeah, because I
Yeah.
remember we were there just to have dinner, and there was an open mic on, and I said, "Oh, you should do this," and you was like,
Hmm.
"I don't have a
I don't have the
guitar."
range.
Yeah, she doesn't have the range. But I said, "Well, ask that person if you can use their guitar," and so you
Yeah.
did, and you sang. But I could feel your nerves so much that
I
I had
don't
to
think
leave the room.
I don't think I looked up. I think I just looked
Yeah.
down and played the guitar, and I don't
Well,
think
I
I
went
even
and
looked up.
stood. I went and stood. There was a little hallway that went down the side of the kitchen to the
Hmm.
toilet. I went and stood down that hallway because I couldn't look at you because your what you were emanating was so like just nerves, like a ball
Yeah.
of nerves that I
Yeah.
felt intimidated by it. I couldn't watch,
Yeah.
and you were, I mean, you said you did a cover of Gwen Stefani,
Yeah.
the real thing.
Did I do the mashup with the New Order song?
I don't think so,
Oh, okay.
but I can remember the five people in attendance were very kind, but they were also, oh, that sounded really nice.
Well, I think open mics are such a nice way for people to build confidence and build a level of comfort. And, that's why I know you mentioned it in the last episode, but, or was it two episodes anyway? But, that's why I love hosting the open mic. And that's why I'm a little hoarse today. That's why my throat's a bit scratchy because last night I was out till late hosting the queer open mic here in London. And it is a lovely, lovely event in that you get people of all levels of artistic ability and all at all stages in their sort of journey on that artistic road. And it could be someone's first time performing, and you can you get that sense of nervousness. You do feel their intimidation, and particularly in the venue we're at now, which is at the Cock Tavern in Kennington in London. Where there's a stage. We've done it in previous incarnations in previous venues where we haven't had a raised stage, but this has a raised stage, and it can be really intimidating if you've never performed in public before to get up there and do it. But watching some of the artists that we have come back month after month and grow in confidence mainly, but just in comfort, to see them become much more comfortable
And
in
how do you
comfort.
feel now, like compared to like that first time in the forest, or even we did that event. There's a famous indie alternative venue in Brisbane called the Zoo,
Hmm.
and we did a fundraising night for our queer student union group at the university that I was going to,
Mm.
and then you came and performed at that. I think it was Queers Take Back Brisbane. Was that what it was?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Queers
Yeah,
Take Back Brisbane, and you were on the bill with who else was on the bill that night?
Jane Woody. Jane
Jane
Woody was
Woody.
there. Wasn't what was that band
Oh,
called?
that Anal
Like,
Traffic.
yes, Anal Traffic. Um, who else? Was that it? No, there must have been more than that.
That that I have a funny story about anal traffic. But anyway, what's
You know, as an aside, did you know the zoo has closed?
no.
Yeah, they did. I think they just did their last ever show not
Oh,
that
that's
long
really
ago, maybe in the
sad.
last 6 months. Yeah, I know. It's such a great venue.
The last gig I went to was when I went to Australia last, January in 2023, and we went to
Hmm.
the Ash
Oh wow, that would have been
there.
amazing. I remember so many great shows there. Gossip, um, Magic Dirt, more than once, I think. Um,
I don't remember seeing Magic Dirt there.
oh really? You
No,
must have been with me, I'm sure, unless you were
no,
away. But yeah,
no, I
yeah,
don't remember.
it was that. What was the album? Anyway, whatever. That's another discussion. But yeah, the zoo
I saw
was
I
such a
saw
good.
Dinosaur Jr. there
Oh
as
wow,
well, which was
yeah.
incredible. Yeah, it was a
But
really great venue. It's so sad that it's closed. I had no idea that was
yeah,
happening. It would
yeah,
always be so hot up there, though. Like
yeah.
I can remember back in the day before they had any sort of air in there, it was roasting. Like if it was over 30 degrees outside, it was just like
Mm.
100 degrees inside, and the bands would be sweating. And
We must have seen Iron on there, no?
I don't know. I actually can't remember. Like everything blurs into
Yeah,
one in
yeah.
Brisbane. I can't remember.
I remember that show, that quiz, Take Back Brisbane show, or whatever it was called. I remember that really well. I think I was the opener. I think I had to go out first.
I can remember one memory I have of two memories I have of that is one, um, I maybe shouldn't say their name, but somebody that we knew from QUT who was a bit of a wild card trying to steal a bottle of alcohol from behind the bar.
Oh, I think I know who you mean. Yeah.
And then also I remember you doing a sound check and you singing in your sound check, you were singing The Killers. Jenny was a friend of mine.
Oh yeah.
I just remember that. I don't know why I remember that,
Wow. Funny.
but I remember you doing that in the sound
I
check.
remember I did mostly original songs, but I did do a cover of Johnny Are You Queer? I remember
Yes,
doing
by
that.
Josie Cotton. Yeah,
Yeah, with the key change.
yeah.
Um,
And you sang that song. You had that song. What was it called? And not to bring the Minogues up again, but it had
oh,
that lyric
yeah,
in it
it
about
was
Danny
just
Minogue and Gwen
it
Stefani.
was just called the song. I think was called Gwen Stefani, wasn't
Oh,
it?
okay.
And it was a silly sort of throwaway song about written sort of to a friend of mine who liked Kylie, and I know how we ended up back talking about the
I
Minogue
know.
sisters, but you know, about how she liked Kylie, but I liked Danny, but it was okay because we had our common ground, our common love for Gwen Stefani.
That was a catchy song.
Mm.
Um,
Anyway, but yeah, the zoo was a great venue.
okay, so how do you feel now? Like, say you performed last night.
Hmm.
How do you feel on stage?
Um, I still feel a sense of, uh, I wouldn't say intimidation or nervousness anymore, but I do something. I feel like something in my brain chemistry changes, and I struggle to find words. I forget lyrics. You know, it's weird. Like you can sing a song at home a million times and just never have to think about the lyrics. They just come naturally. But I do think something changes in my brain chemistry when I'm, you know, when I have lights on me and a microphone in front of me. It just it's it stops my brain working at full capacity or something. And you know that I think partly is um, being in an environment you're not used to. So the more you do it, the more you do that and get on stage, I think the more comfortable you get with it. But I don't really
Ma-
feel nervous anymore.
Imagine having to learn dance routines on top of that.
Oh my god, I
Imagine
know.
like we're talking about like 911 and Bewitched and everyone. Imagine having
Mm,
to remember the lyrics to a song
mm,
and a dance routine.
yeah,
And you see someone like Gaga who will do a very often unnecessarily intricate dance routine on
mm.
top of remembering to sing and usually singing live.
Hmm.
How complicated that would be. It makes
Oh,
me think of that
it's
the thing I told you about Madonna, where they have the in-ear piece with the prompts for live
yeah,
performers, and they showed it
yeah,
with the Madonna thing, saying, counting into the next. Um,
I mean, I suppose you have to say that's not none that hasn't been verified as true, though. I mean,
I think it is, because I think it's also like other artists have come forward saying, "Yeah, I do this."
I mean, I
Like,
can believe it. I can believe it would happen, and it would make sense. Like, if you've got that many songs to remember, that many lyrics, and dance routines,
and not only dance routines, but staging that would be dangerous if you forgot where to stand.
yeah,
So it's like
yeah.
there's a trap door about to open, so they say, "Walk to the top of the platform." Like they
They
give a
say
prompt.
they sing that. They sing that. Did you have that show, Trapdoor? Did
What's
you have
that?
that animated cartoon of "Stay away from that trapdoor, cause there's
No,
something down there"? And so I can imagine Madonna being on stage and someone singing that into the mic. Stay away from that trapdoor.
I can't imagine a performer like Prince when he was alive having those prompts though. But maybe he did. I don't know. But
No, I can't imagine that because his shows were so spontaneous. Like if you listen or watch or read interviews with any of his band members, they will all say that like they wouldn't know. I mean, they'd have a set list, but they honestly wouldn't know from one night to the next what songs he would do because he would just like suddenly like mid song like pivot into something else.
they had to rehearse every song
Everything.
that
Yeah.
might come up,
Yeah.
and they had to rehearse them like hundreds of times. So
Yeah.
if he did just say, "Hey, start playing the opening chords to a certain song," they
Mm.
had to go, "Okay, we know what to do, and
Yeah.
we also know what dance moves to do or
Yeah.
where to be positioned on stage." So
Yeah.
it wasn't just they just had to go along and play. They also had to, if he was getting them to like sidestep
Mm.
it at a certain time in that song, they had to know when to do it,
Yeah.
and they would rehearse like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of just one song, and
So I can't imagine somebody who has such a fluid performance like that. I can't imagine them. But then, I can't imagine them having an in-ear mic, with prompts.
yeah.
But then Prince didn't get to live to be the age that Madonna is now. That's, maybe if he was still alive and still performing, he might need that today.
And maybe that technology has only really been developed in the last few years, and maybe everybody uses it. Maybe it's an industry standard.
Yeah.
Maybe Beyonce uses it. Because these shows are not, they're not like live gigs. It's not like
No,
going to
they're a
see Magic Bird at the zoo.
a real production.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe this is something that's come from theatre. I don't know. Maybe in-ear
Could be.
prompts is a theatre thing as well. Like to remind people of, moving sets or
Hmm.
things that are going to happen. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I suppose that technology to be so seamlessly like have like wireless connection with just one performer out of everybody on stage and 10, 30,000 people in a stadium.
Hmm.
That technology is only really in the last 5 years or so, 5 to 10 years, been that good that it would work without like a mistake. Because
Yeah.
like think back to when Madonna in the Truth or Dare documentary, where she's talking about how her headless mic kept cutting out,
Hmm.
and they're saying, "Oh, we're sorry, we don't know what's happening. Why isn't it happening to Donna and Nikki? Oh, they're on a different frequency. Well, put me on their fucking frequency. I don't know,
Hmm.
But that was what 30 something years
20.
ago,
Yeah.
34
Yeah.
years ago, right? The Blonde Ambition tour,
Was it that long ago? My God, yeah,
right?
1990,
So,
right?
so
91.
you think of how far technology has come now that a microphone would never cut out, and now they can also pipe instructions
Yeah,
into somebody's ear
yeah,
and isolate them to be the only one picking up that frequency, whatever. Yeah, it's very, very different.
mm, mm.
But where do you see your live performing going? Obviously, there's all possibilities with what you do with your music, or you might try and get it like synced onto a show. Where do you see yourself as a live performer going? What do you want to happen?
Well, I don't know. That's a very deep and important question. I'm not prepared
Just
for
as
it.
we're wrapping up the
Yeah, and
episode.
wrapping up. I suppose I don't know is the answer. I feel like I'm at the beginning. So I mean, I can give a very very sort of brief summary of where I'm at musically. So for those that don't know me, I have only recently gotten serious about music. It's something, I'm 47 now, and it's something that I always loved. And I've always, I took piano lessons when I was younger. I taught myself guitar, and I've always, pretty much wherever I've been in the world or in my life, I've always had a guitar with me, which I've loved to play, and never particularly well. Never really applied myself, but it was just something I really enjoyed. And there was definitely a part of me that always thought, you know, my dream job or my dream sort of life would be as a musician, writing and performing songs. But I think I was distracted by, life, jobs, family, relationships, and again, not to sort of get too in depth with it, but I had my own sort of physical and mental health struggles over the years, and when COVID came, it gave me an opportunity to really take stock and think, what have I not done? I mean, it's a bit of a cliche. That's what a lot of people did, right? They took stock and thought, well, what have I not done with my life that I've always wanted to do? And I kept coming back to the idea of music. And, I started writing songs and I got more serious about it. And then I recorded some things, and then I started gigging, I started, excuse me, I started doing gigs. I started the open mic, which is why my voice is so croaky today, because of the open mic last night.
It's really croaky now. Maybe we've talked too long.
Yeah, maybe been
Can't lose your voice.
yapping about the Minogues for too long. But anyway, to cut a long story short, I'm only really now at the point where I'm at the cusp of releasing music on Spotify for the first time. And I think, I can't remember how many it was, but there are tens of thousands of songs uploaded to Spotify every single day. And so I know, I'm very, very aware that to actually get anyone to listen to them or to get any exposure at all it's like finding a needle in a haystack. There is such a small likelihood of my music getting listened to widely by people that I don't know really. Of course, what I would love to do is be able to earn enough money from music to keep on making it and producing it and performing it. But I also have to be realistic about the odds of that and the chances of that. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know where it's going.
Well,
And
maybe if you apply yourself and you work really hard, and one day 911 might cover one of your songs
wow,
and make it big in Vietnam. And
that
then,
would be the dream.
yeah. And then you can open for them at Leeds University, and you can counteract any homophobic remarks they make to the crowd.
Yeah, there we go. That would be the dream. I mean, yeah, it would be amazing to be able to earn, decent money. But I think even if I never make any money, I think I'll still do it because it's given me, so much joy and so much pleasure over the last couple of years that, I think it will always be something that I do and that I enjoy. But yeah, it would be so good if that, would coincide with actual, income and a career. But who knows?
All right. Well, keep at it. We believe in you.
And
I
maybe
mean,
one day I'll be opening the Olympic ceremony.
yeah, on the steps doing a feather dance with Gaga. But
Hmm.
we have mentioned a few times about your music um, on the podcast. But have we mentioned that the intro and the outro music is actually one of your pieces of music?
No, we haven't. We haven't. Yeah, that's my song "Empty Seat," which was written long before the podcast was ever even talked about, and it's what gave us the title for the podcast. Tell me where I'm going wrong.
Yeah, because it's a
Um,
lyric in the song. Yeah.
yeah, and I don't know. Do we have time quickly to talk about the song, or should we save that for another episode?
That could be its own episode. And I'd
All
have
right.
to come up with some links, how I can somehow link Kylie and Danny to telling that story. So give me time
Okay.
to think
All
about
right.
how
Well,
I'm
maybe
going
we'll
to work
save that for
them.
a future episode.
Yeah, how I can work them into it. They're definitely a recurring theme. Maybe 911 will not be a recurring theme unless they do something exceptional.
I hope
But
not.
yeah, the Minogues seem to be a recurring theme already, and we're only 3 episodes into the podcast.
And I think we've also mentioned the Charmed one or all of the Charmed actors in every episode as well. So
yeah, and Prince is definitely someone that we've mentioned every time.
Sean, I think you should start your own podcast just about like 90s flash in the pan musical acts. There must be one already, sure. There must be multiple ones.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But if not, maybe that's
I don't know if I'm a little too lazy though to actually do the research, because I would just be like this, telling all stories how I misremember them.
right.
And then
Okay.
everyone would be like, that's absolutely not true, which didn't have 4 number ones. Or Billie Piper was 16 by the time her second single came out. You know, like I won't remember things properly and I won't be bothered to do the research.
Yeah. One of my favorite podcasts is the A Journey Through Stock Aitken and Waterman, just because
Brilliant.
it's so well researched. Like those guys
It's
are
sensational.
yeah.
Yeah, that is, I think, the best podcast I've ever heard. And maybe we can talk about our favorite podcasts one day. And
it's so vastly different to our podcast, where we haven't rehearsed or prepared anything at all.
But that's the thing. I mean, the research that they do is exceptional. It's of a level of investigative journalism.
Yeah,
and it is so highly entertaining, and they are just incredible at what they do, and I can't get enough of that. I'm getting really nervous because they're getting towards the end.
I know.
What they're doing is going through chronologically every album either written or produced by Stock Aitken and Waterman production team, or
any song or album, singles.
It is.
Yeah,
it's singles. Yeah.
So
they're getting towards the end of that, and I'm getting really nervous. Like, what am I going to do once they run out of songs?
I know, because they will get to an end point. I mean, they also do that other podcast, don't they? The A Journey Through Aussie Pop.
Yeah.
Is that both of them, or is that just...
No.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, if anyone's interested, like, Google Chartbeats Australia, Google A Journey Through Stock Aitken and Waterman, Google Journey Through Aussie Pop. It is like the best content on the internet. I think it's sensational. But maybe we can have an episode about where we talk about
I'd love to. I want to talk about so many others. But
I actually listen to a lot of podcasts. I realized thinking about that. Some that I probably shouldn't, because they're a bit problematic. So I might have to go through my list.
Maybe we won't talk about those ones then. Or we can talk about why they're problematic, but you still listen anyway.
Yeah.
Which I've got one that fits into that category. All right, should we wrap it up there?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us on Tell Me Where I'm Going Wrong. We'll be back again next week. If you want to get in touch with us, I don't know, how can people get in touch with us? Do we have an email address?
I mean, if I had done my preparation well, I would have it all written out in front of me, so I wouldn't have to like grab a phone and look at it. But I mean, if you're listening or watching listening to or watching the podcast now, obviously there'll be an image at the end of this which tells you all our social media handles. I believe, I could be wrong, I believe on Instagram and on TikTok we're just Tell Me Where I'm Going. I think on YouTube it's something different, but just you'll find us somehow if you just
or you can reach out to us directly on most social media. I'm Fat Gay Vegan,
and I'm Josh and the Jump Starts. And
until next week, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a 911 pun, but I can't think of any.
Oh, I would just say have a wonderful Olympic ceremony.
What do you mean? It's already
Olympic Games.
Oh, listen, don't get me started on that, because I've got a whole anti-Olympic Games
rant
to go on as well. So maybe that'll be next time as well.
Maybe we'll cut that out.
Okay, well, until next time, keep your body shaking. That's a 911.
People won't know what.
Look it up, 911 body shaking.
All right, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll be back in your feeds really soon.
Bye.
Bye.